So we're going to show you how to make what's called Kraut-chi. You may be thinking to yourself, what is Kraut-chi? I'm used to the term kimchi. So a Kraut-chi is a non-traditional kimchi. Traditional kimchi is made with Napa cabbage, daikon radish, and other ingredients like fish sauce, sometimes rice powder. Kraut-chi is a version of the similar type end product where we're not using Napa cabbage, we're using green cabbage, we're using some similar ingredients. So it's not fair to call it kimchi because it's not traditional in the sense that it entails or it has everything in it that traditional kimchi has. As a family and individually, I really prefer Kraut-chi. It's basically any combination of vegetables you want that also has the addition of the Korean chili powder. Okay, so this is the one ingredient that makes it more like traditional kimchi is the Korean hot pepper powder, which happens to be red. Okay, so we have a jar of some finished Kraut-chi. You can see it has a similar look to maybe what kimchi looks like. It's very deep red, and that's from all the Korean chili powder in there. It's crunchy, it's delicious. It has ginger, garlic, carrot, green onion, and it's just a wonderful ferment that can be utilized in so many ways. So very similar to the other ferment recipe videos, we are going to essentially just cut everything up, add salt, and in this case some other ingredients, and mix it up. So we've got our washed cabbage here. We are going to remove the core, doing that upside down V cut. And like the other videos, if you don't have a fermenting weight set or top like this one here, it's good to keep the core of the cabbage. We've already shown you how to do that, so in this case I'm going to put the cabbage in the carburetor there. Okay, we are going to cut the cabbage. I've missed a little bit of the core there. You see that? I just caught that. So if you do that, that's no biggie. Just cut it out again. And one more there. So get the, we don't want the core in the ferment. Not that it's going to make you sick or it doesn't taste, it's just the texture of it is just not good. Okay, so we are going to cut the cabbage into 3. Place it down on the flat side. Again, if you at any point see a leaf that doesn't look so hot, just get rid of it. You don't want to throw something that's not at its best into the ferment. Okay, and we're just going to slice this. Now, you may be thinking, well, why doesn't he want to use Napa cabbage? Well, the texture of the Napa cabbage after fermentation is just a little soft, and I prefer a crunchier texture in my ferments, so this is why we go with green cabbage. Again, some leaves that are not so happy, so we're going to put them out of their misery. And again, if you recall, the size of the cut is completely up to you. The key is that it's consistent, right? So always putting the vegetable you're cutting down on the flat side is the safest way to cut so that it doesn't rock and you don't roll your hand over. Okay, this is not looking happy. We're just going to get rid of it. And once we have all this sliced up, I'm going to just put it into our bowl here. Use your hands to break it up just to make sure you don't see any suspect really large pieces that need to be broken down a bit more. Looking good. Okay, so again, this is where this recipe differs. We're going to put some carrot and green onion in next. The carrot has just been lightly washed. Now you can just shred this carrot like we did in the last video, which really is the easiest, or you can cut it into matchstick pieces, which I'll show you now. So we'll just cut the ends off. We'll cut it in half. We'll cut a flat side off the bottom. This allows us to hold the carrot without it rocking. And then we're going to just cut strips like this. Now a sharp knife really helps here. This one, full disclosure, hasn't been sharpened in a couple weeks, so it's not doing the best, but it's still going to work. And we're going to create these little piles and just create this little matchstick cut. They look like sort of mini carrot sticks that you'd put on a veggie platter. Now, the advantage to doing the matchstick cut is, again, texture. You're going to have a crunchier carrot. You'll be able to really feel that carrot in the Kraut-chi when you're eating it. It'll be quite obviously a crunchy carrot. So if you'd like it to be broken down a little further, you can just simply grab your cheese grater and just shred it. And so you can see there's a bit of a difference in size, so you'll have that effect in the finished fermented product. Crunchier, a little less crunchy. Okay? There's no, like if you want to shred some and do some matchstick, you can do it that way as well. Okay, so we'll get our carrot in there. The green onions have been washed. Again, we're going to always look. You can see that there's a little bit of visible spots that have some dirt on them. We don't want to put dirt into our ferment, so we're just going to do a quick look. They grow in dirt, so we want to make sure, as most vegetables do, we want to make sure we don't see any physical dirt on there. And then essentially we're just going to cut this however you really want. If you want big chunks in there, you can do that. I like them a little finer so that you get the onion flavor throughout. And so I'm just going to cut them on a bias, fairly thin. And I think the recipe only calls for 3 green onions, so that's what we're going to do. The onion gives the ferment quite a nice flavor, right? A different sort of element of flavor. Also gives it some nice color. And we're just simply going to add those to our bowl. We are going to do minced garlic and ginger now. So if you've never minced garlic before, you're just going to take your knife, lay it flat, do a smash, take your peel off. Now, again, if you're the type that doesn't want their hands smelling like garlic for a week, you could put a glove on. We'll take that skin off. We're going to just take off the hard end piece here. Make sure that doesn't go in our ferment. Again, texture-wise, it's not going to be nice. And then we're going to just crush this. And we crush this kind of a similar way. We're going to just kind of smash it down. Another method is to kind of use your knife like this to kind of crush it down. And once you get it crushed really good, you'll start to see some oils come out. And it can be like my fingers are slipping because of the garlic oil, so you do have to be careful that you don't slip and cut yourself. So some people will do it like this. You're kind of scraping it back and forth. And we'll kind of have a nice little paste happening here. Don't worry that there's some carrot or green onion in there. It's all going to the same place. Once we get it scraped down, we're just going to give it a chop. Every so often, kind of move it around. Scrape it, and then we're going to just run it like this again. You can see that nice paste, lots of oil occurring there. Now you can take this as fine as you want, or as coarse as you want, but that's good enough for me. Next, we're going to do ginger. So if you've never peeled ginger before, the easiest way to do it is using a spoon. So I think we need about a tablespoon of ginger. So we're going to first take the ginger, use the spoon to actually scrape the skin off. I try to teach people to do it away from yourself. So a lot of times when we peel, we go towards our body and towards our thumb. The only danger with that here is not that it's a danger, it's just that ginger juice really stings in the eye. So so does garlic juice, but we want to make sure that we're working away from ourselves. You can go towards yourself like this, but you risk getting that ginger juice in your eye. It really stings. So we're just going to work the skin off like that. The spoon works great to get into the crevices like this, and dig them out a little bit. So we want to try to get all of that skin off. You can see I still like to go towards me, so it's worth the risk for me. But for you, if you don't like ginger juice in your eye, don't do that. Okay, so there we go. If there's a part that's really hard to peel and it's a little woody, you can just discard it. And then some crevices are too hard to get into, so you might have to break it down and just get the rest of that skin out. See, this is kind of a woody part. I'm just going to trim it off. This part again, a little woody. Anything that's not sort of has a blemish, you don't want to include in your ferment anyways. So if it's ugly, cut it out of there. And I'm going to try to take a second here to get some of this skin off. We don't want the ginger skin in the ferment, mostly because of the texture. And what we're going to do here is just kind of finely chop this. Now you can puree this using a food processor or a microplane, or you can just shred it. I'm going to just show you how to finely chop it first. So kind of like the carrot, we're cutting some thin pieces, and then we're going to cut smaller matchstick pieces, turn it, and then just go the opposite way. So we'll have these little finely chopped ginger. So again, if you leave the ginger in bigger chunks, you'll have more bursts of flavor when you take bites. If you turn it into like a puree or a minced ginger, the flavor is going to spread throughout a little bit better. So it's kind of really what you want. So using a grater or a microplane works just fine. But in this case, we're just going to kind of finely chop it up. And if you can't get really nice cuts like this, because I left a couple chunky there, don't stress about it. We can just kind of go over it once this way, move it around, and then just give it, that one kind of was hanging out on the knife there. We just got to give it a chop this way and chop it down, again, to whatever size that you prefer, remembering that the bigger chunks are going to have a different sort of mouthfeel when you bite into them. They're going to be much more gingery, and if we mince it, it's going to kind of spread throughout a little bit better. And so that's good, that's in there. So we're now going to continue on making our Kraut-chi. Now we were discussing before what makes a traditional kimchi. One of the main things is gochu-garu, I always mess that up, gochu-garu powder. Now it's actually a gochu-garu hot pepper that is used in different products like gochujang or gochu-garu ketchup. Where do you find this product? Might be something you're thinking. Most Asian supermarkets carry this, but you can notice that, I struggled with the terminology and how to pronunciate it or pronounce it. This was bought at an Asian supermarket, and it just says red pepper powder on there. So this is a key ingredient when making Kraut-chi or traditional kimchi. When we talk about doing variations to different ferments, the variation is very simply for kimchi or Kraut-chi is how spicy do you want it. So your recipe calls for a half a cup of the powder, and that's what we're going to add. If you don't have this or are not willing to kind of venture out and find it, because it can be a little challenging, you can substitute paprika mixed with chili powder half and half. So we are going to do a half cup of the gochu-garu powder, which is a decent amount. Like once I spread this around here, you'll be thinking, oh, that's a lot, half a cup, right? So you can see that it is quite a bit, right? But another way to make it spicier is very simply adding more of the powder, or in this case, we are going to add a hot chili pepper. So when you're making this, you can substitute any hot chili pepper in here. This is a crimson red pepper or hot pepper. You could add a jalapeno or a poblano if you wanted some mild spice. You could go right up to a Carolina Reaper or a scorpion or ghost pepper if you wanted it really hot. So this is somewhere in the middle. Now, when we are dealing with hot peppers, it's important to wear gloves. I'm going to put on 2 because even if you weren't going to add the hot fresh pepper, smashing the goju garu powder with your hands can be very irritating to your skin as well. So it's always good to use gloves when dealing with hot peppers. So when we deal with this pepper, we're going to just cut the top off. Now, if you want it spicier, you're going to leave your seeds in. Okay, we'll cut it in half. So I'll show you, and the decision has sort of been made for us. We can see that we have a bit of rot on the inside of this hot pepper. So I would actually normally leave the seeds in, but because we have a little bit of rot, we're going to just take them right out. And I'm going to just quickly do that here so that we don't have any of that rot. But if the seeds were intact and in really good condition, we could just add the seeds, which would make it quite a bit spicier. But with all that powder already in there and the addition of the fresh chili, it should be quite spicy enough. So we're just going to simply cut it fairly fine. Again, we're talking about a hot pepper, so we don't want to have huge chunks in there. We want to kind of break it down a little bit. Or if you're a really big fan of spicy food, you can leave it really chunky and add more than 1 hot pepper if you'd like. Okay, and we'll just break this down a bit here. Now, it's been a hot summer around here, so this is on the Scoville scale, this is sort of in the middle, this pepper. So I can already feel the heat from it. So we can tell that it's going to add quite a bit of heat to our Kraut-chi. Just like all the other ferments, we're going to now just carefully give this a toss. So we've got our cabbage, our carrot, our hot pepper, green onion, minced garlic, minced ginger, and the only thing we're missing is, and you should know this by now, the salt. So we've got that all mixed in there, and we are going to grab the salt right over here. We're going to have to wipe the salt jar. We've got some of that powder on there. And we're going to just add that tablespoon of salt. Don't forget the salt when you're doing fermentation, because it helps flavor it. It helps keep down bad microbial growth. But essentially, without salt, fermented stuff doesn't have very much great flavor. It has a completely different flavor. Okay, so we're going to just like the other ones, toss it around so everything's coated well. And then we're going to just go to town with our Kraut smasher one more time. So we're going to break down the cell wall. Now on this particular ferment, we are going to be using a regular mouth jar, so we're going to be using the other side when we stuff the jar, which you'll see in a minute. And we've got cabbage just a fly-in. So now this particular ferment doesn't ferment quite as long as you'll notice in the recipe. And the reason being for that is it's just given a lot more food, right? So we're giving it the red pepper powder, which breaks down and kind of coats everything and is there for the microbes to eat. It's got carrots, which are higher in sugar. So we've got a bit of a shorter ferment on this. But again, anytime you're doing fermentation, you essentially just want to take it to the flavor that you prefer. There's no safety concerns about you eating fermented foods unless you can physically see something happening on the top that isn't right, if it's moldy or fuzzy. So there's no risk in you tasting it. So I would encourage you to get comfortable with tasting your ferments, and when you are at a point where it's like, I like the flavor and the texture, there's no need to keep fermenting it any longer, especially with a shorter ferment with this Kraut-chi. So I'm just going to keep bashing away, and then eventually we're going to do a squeeze to see how much brine formation we have from the juices coming out. But just bear in mind that, as I've mentioned before, if you leave this for a half an hour to an hour, it's going to make for easier work for you on your arms. Okay. So we've been bashing our Kraut-chi here for a little while, and we can see that we're getting some better juice development. Now this is an older cabbage we use, so a younger cabbage is going to just be less hardy and more juicy. So we're going to see how we shape up by putting it in the jar and using the Kraut smasher to compress it down. So we're just going to go into a regular mouth canning jar, which is going to be our fermentation vessel. I wish you could smell how beautiful in flavor it smells. It's just super, it's got that chili kind of heat happening, some garlic, some ginger. It does look very similar to what a traditional kimchi looks like, at least in color, right? Obviously the cabbage pieces are not quite as big. Now we were talking here just about a minute ago about salt, and when we added the salt, we always want to make sure that we go a little bit extra on the salt if you're concerned. So if you think you've added too many extra vegetables, it's better or best to just add a bit of extra salt, again for flavor and for safe fermentation. We will talk about that a little bit, and there's a section in the pro tips and the recipes that talks at length about that. Okay, so we've got a pretty compressed jar here. It's interesting because, I was going to go wide mouth. We need to go regular mouth. We've got well more than enough brine here, but it's a lot thicker because of the amount of gochujang. I always mess that up. The Korean chili powder that we've added, right? So it's a little thicker, but that's okay. This is a much shorter ferment, so you can hopefully see there that the brine itself is very thick. And that's normal because of the extra ingredients we've added. And there's going to be much more food for the Kraut-chi microbes that are occurring in there to eat. So we have a shorter ferment, 4 to 8 days, probably max. We are going to be using a different fermenting top set now with the mason top. So this is the weight. We're going to set it, and we're perfect. We're about 1.5 inches, right? So we've got the weight set. It's holding the vegetables down. If you look here, you can see the weight a little bit, but we don't actually see any vegetables. We just have this brine right up here. So that's kind of what we're going for. So we've got our weight set. We've got about 1.5 inches. I'm going to take these gloves off, and we are going to give the jar a nice wipe. Give my hands a rinse here. Two paper towels. The first one we're going to use to, again, clean the inside of the jar above the brine. This is really key. Remember, we don't want any vegetables hanging out up there. And once we have kind of used the first paper towel, we're going to just take a clean one again and just do a double check, make sure there's no particles hanging, and then we can use the rest of it to just wipe the outside because it's quite dirty. Wipe that down. I got a little bit of stuff on the outside of the pickle pipe, which is the top. I'm going to give that a rinse. Just first, we always want to keep things clean during fermentation. So I gave that a quick rinse. We're going to apply that to the top. We're going to turn our canning ring on, and we're not going to crank it on there. We want it to be just a little loose. This will allow any gas that builds up in here to escape, because over the next few days, there's going to be a lot of CO2 production and gas. It will actually expand, and if there's not enough headspace room for it to expand, the gas has nowhere to go, obviously, than out. So you'll see sometimes this bulging, and if you have it really tight, it'll be super bulged, and then you'll actually have brine hit your ceiling, right? So you want to keep it on there, but not super tight, just a little loose, which allows for more gas to escape. So this ferment, it's one of my faves, just giving it a better wipe here. It's going to go to a cool, dark place and ferment from anywhere from 4 to 8 days. I generally like the flavor after 4. Remember that if it's in a hotter area or it's more hot and humid outside, it will ferment faster. So if it's the middle of winter when you're making this, it'll ferment slower just because it's cooler outside. And you don't want to put it in too hot of a spot or too cool of a spot. A dark, cool place is the best. And we're going to let this ferment for a few days, and then we'll taste it. Remember, though, we do need to check it. So tomorrow morning, obviously off camera, I'm going to take my lid off, double check that no floaties have come up to the top. Right now we're good. But remember, when there's gas being produced in there, that CO2 is moving up and will actually push vegetables to the top of your surface. So you need to make sure you don't have vegetable floaties at the top. Between the top of the brine and the jar, those are prone to bad microbial growth.